Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to the John Gaunt podcast. Something slightly different today. I've called it the reflections of a 64-year-old gammon, i.e., me. But I want to know, how did we lose Great Britain? Because I think we have lost it. We've got this modern world, a bit like the dire straits. We've got our TV, our cable TV, and everything else. But have we lost something that essentially made us British, that made this country great? And I don't want it to be a rant about politicians, because in the end, they're irrelevant, aren't they? It's what kind of society do we want to live in? What kind of community? What things can we do to make things different? Now, I'm probably in this mood today. Well, I know why I'm in this mood. Two reasons. One, I spoke to a very good friend of mine today about her child being run over and the police's inaction to it. And also, it's the anniversary of my mother's death week on Tuesday. She died on December the 9th. I was 12. We'll come on to that in a moment. So these two things, and it's always the same for me at Christmas. And this Christmas is quite poignant as well because, as you know, I'm skint. So I used to do Christmas. By the way, the backdrop, that is not real. I don't live in a house like that. I used to when I was on national telly and national radio, but I lost everything, as I think I've told you several times. So this Christmas is going to be a weird one for me. I ain't got any money to buy presents. In fact, Lisa said to me last night, that's my wife, she said to me last night, what have you thought about presents? I said, I've thought nothing. We'll just have to have a nice time. Or we'll do that thing that we did many, many, many years ago where everybody just buys Secret Santa. Everybody just buys one present for another member of the family. But I used to have so much cash, I'd buy almost the bloody shop. I can also remember, and this is for people who live in Coventry, Barnaby's. Remember Barnaby's toy shop? You'd have your nose up against the window, picking what you wanted. And I always wanted a chopper, a bike. I never got it. I was brought up in the 70s, in 73. So anyway, let me get back to my story, because I think it's important. We've lost something. Feel free if you want to comment. But this is not a political rant. This is me just reflecting on, have we lost Great Britain? And I ironically called it a 64-year-old gammon reflects. Because do you know what? I used to think this at 40 and 50, but certainly at 60 or 64, nobody wants our views, which is why I'm trying to do YouTube and encourage other older people to get on, because our experience, our views are important, certainly as important, if not more important, than Generation Z or Z or whatever they call it. I mean, yesterday was a prime example. That budget was crap. The whole thing was rubbish. And now the way they're all fighting over it today, and the lies. I don't even want to go there. But what I'm trying to say is we've lost something as a society. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Back to where I was starting anyway. My mum died, as I said, when I was 12. And this sparked off in me today because I got a friend and her son got run over a couple of weeks ago in Coventry near a school. When I say run over, hit, so I had to have a few days off, bad leg, nothing too serious. But the serious part about it is that the bloke or woman who knocked him over didn't stop. They carried on driving. Unfortunately for them, this area's got a lot of CCTV cameras. So the mum told the police what happened, and the police said, well, we'll come round and get a witness statement off your lad this weekend. That was the weekend before last. The coppers haven't come. And I said to her today, how's your lad? Oh, he's back at school. That's good to hear, I said. And what about the coppers? Have they been round? No. And I was outraged. Absolutely outraged. My dad was a copper. I've told you this before. 30 odd years he had in the police. He never rose above the rank of constable. But we lived in a police house in a place called Bulwer Road in Radford, a working class district. You go there now, it's like going to the United Nations. There's all different sorts of communities. But when I was there, It was a white working class area. We did have Roman, who I went to school with, and his dad was Polish, and he ran the chip shop. He was an absolute nutcase. The amount of times my dad used to get woken up to go over and sort out because Roman's dad had lost the rag with some customer. But I don't think we had any other ethnics. We had loads of Irish, of course, down the road, the Doyles and Paul Kavanagh and people like that. And we all just mixed up and rubbed up. I mean, the real diversity, I presume, was the fact that I was a proddy and I went to Hillfort Farm, and the kids, the Doyles and people and Kavanagh, they were Irish and they went to mass. But we had something that united us, which was church. I'm not deeply religious now, but we had church, and I don't know, and Sunday school, did that give us a spine that made us have something to live towards? I don't know. Was it because the whole community of Radford at that time was skint? My mum used to work for that very quaint phrase, pin money, in the local, I don't know, it wasn't called Tesco's, it was called Fine Fair, and before that it was called George Mason. She was just a shop assistant. No, I shouldn't say just a shop assistant, but that's what she was. And my dad was a copper. And I thought about my dad this morning, and I didn't have the best relationship with my father. In fact, I hated him for most of my life, but I'll tell you about that in a moment. However, what my dad and the guy next door, Keylock, Paul Keylock and Richard Keylock's dad, would have gone mental if nobody had been around there. They were the beat coppers for the area. They would have gone and seen this woman. It's all on CCTV. Why can't they do that? Are they that busy? They're probably off doing diversity. Careful, John, you don't want to rant. But maybe they are off doing diversity training. And I was thinking about this as I walked back home today. We've got this diverse society and we're all meant to be kind. And then people yesterday got upset when Kemi Badenoch had a right pop at Rachel Reeves. I personally thought it was funny. But when you put that into real perspective, everybody's saying, oh, be kind, be this. And then the police as well. They don't look like my dad. I remember when my dad was in the coppers, he had a cape. He had a truncheon. He had a whistle as his only form of communication. Now they're tooled up like RoboCop. But they don't seem to get involved, do they? Unless it's farmers in London, of course. Then they'll arrest them left, right and centre. And then we've got politicians fighting over each other. But do they really give a toss about what we think? Well, clearly not. The Brexit vote, they ignored. So this is the kind of thing I was thinking about. Then I got to think about my mum. Because as I say, week Tuesday, she's been, I can't even remember how many years it is. I was 12. Well, I don't know if you lost a parent when you were young, but it all gets mixed up. I can't remember if I was 12 or 13, whether she died in 73 or 71. I could look it up, but somehow I've never done it. But when my mum died, my whole life changed. Because we were working class. We lived in a police house. There were 4 of them at the end of this road. All the other houses were council houses. All of us were skint. This was before coppers got paid correctly, right? My dad couldn't afford to buy a house. But I know it sounds a bit now gammon-y, if you want to use that term, and a bit nostalgic. But I think we were happier then. I think we were happier. We had nout. And why it got me thinking about Christmas was because Lisa, when she said this to me the other day, have you thought about Christmas presents? And I answered honestly, no. Partly, I suppose, psychologically, I've blocked it out in my head because, well, if I'm honest with you, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed that I can't buy my kids presents this year. They're old now, 32 and 30. And Lisa will probably get them something because she works, but I don't. I've only got this, and I'm trying to build this as you know. So maybe I'm embarrassed. Is it called emasculation? I don't feel like a proper man. I'm really being honest with you here and straight. So then I got thinking about, well, we had nout when we were kids. I remember that night my mum died. Tom, it's weird how these things, again, if you've lost somebody close, you'll know what I'm talking about though. Tom Jones was on the telly. There was only two TV channels in those days. Funny though, we always found something to watch. Now we've got all the channels in the world. We've got our mobile phones, etc., etc. We can all sit there multitasking. I'm the same. I'm there. I said to Lisa the other day, who are you talking to on there? Because we were trying to watch Cemetery Road. I don't know if you've seen it. It's brilliant. But anyway, and she said, I'm not texting. I'm on Instagram. I said, you're right, teenager. She said, you can talk. You're always on your phone, on X or Facebook, promoting what we laughably call your career. She didn't say that bit. That's me. That's my emasculation again. However, that's what happened. And then I was thinking, well, we had BBC One, BBC Two. I remember that coming out. You'll have to remind me what year that was. I can't remember. And we had ITV. So anyway, I don't know which channel Tom Jones was on, but Tom Jones was on, and he was my mum's favourite. And my mum was sitting in her chair, and she had this bowl, a washing bowl on her lap, and she was scrubbing like mad at this saddle, this bicycle saddle. Our kid, my young brother, Jason, he was only about 5 at the time, he'd gone to bed. And this was his Christmas present. Not just the saddle. They'd bought a bike, a second-hand bike. It wasn't a chopper. Do you remember those little bikes with the little wheels back and front? RSA 16s or something? They were rallies. So my dad had walled it down and repainted it, spray painted it. And the final job was me mum to clean the saddle. So it would look nice when they gave it to him on Christmas Day. Tom Jones is on the telly. I can't remember exactly what song he was singing, but my mum was telling us to shut up because she loved him. I don't know where my dad was. He was probably out working or drinking. Can't remember. I do remember it was the 9th of December, and I do remember that she'd just put on, we had like this cardinal, do you remember cardinal red? Was it called cardinal red? This kind of fireplace that she always put this red stuff on. So it was shining bright because she'd cleaned. And like in those days, your mum used to clean the front street in front of your little front garden, didn't she? And in Bulwer Road and Heathcote Street, we had shops. Do you remember when we had shops? Little shops. Where I lived, there was a hardware shop. Oh, I love the smell of it. Bolton's. I can remember it to this day. And all you could smell was the paraffin. Do you remember that? It's like when you used to go to the co-op. I could tell you when I was in a co-op if I was blindfolded in the old days because of the smells. We had a chip shop. Roman's dad, the Mad Pole, he lived there. He ran that place. We had a VG shop. The kid who lived there, he was older than us. He had a Jag. That's when I fell in love with Jaguars. He had a red Jag with yellow or white leather. He looked a bit, I tell you, he looked like you lazy scouse git in Alf Garnett. Yeah, the son. Do you remember? Or the son-in-law? Sorry, I'm getting a bit nostalgic now. I said I wouldn't, but this is a bit like that. Anyway, me mum had cardinal red the fireplace. And she'd put a bowl of nuts down. Brazil nuts, walnuts. What else would it be? Oh, monkey nuts in a different bowl. Do you remember? Did you have monkey nuts? And fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. Because Christmas was special. She also had the satsumas and she had a bowl of fruit. And she had warned us all, the 3 lads, don't any of you bloody touch that fruit or those nuts before Christmas Eve or I'll kill you. Now, you didn't mess with my mum. So that was fair enough. But there was one apple left. Just one solitary apple from the last week's or the month's refill. And I said, Mum, can I have that apple just before I go to bed? And she said, no, I'll share it with you. Go and get a knife. You know what you like. I was 11 or 12. I had hormones raging. I said, all right. So I went to the kitchen, brought out a knife, and I cut the apple in half. And again, you know what it's like when you are a kid. You take the biggest half for yourself. So I gave her the apple, her part of the apple. Tom Jones is still singing. My dad's not there. I don't know where. I think Simon was there on the settee. And I said, all right, Mum, see you later. Thanks. And I went to go upstairs. She said, oi, come back here. So I came back. I said, what's up, Mum? And this is why I always say, give your kids a kiss, give them a hug, and don't forget to tell them you love them at the end of a program. She said, give me a kiss. Again, 11, 12, you know what it's like. So I gave her a kiss and she held me tight for a second and off I went. Thought no more of it. Tom Jones still singing. I went up to bed with the biggest piece of the apple, leaving her the smallest bit. The next morning, I was woken by my dad and my mum was gone. My mum had a brain hemorrhage on the carpet in the lounge. Well, the lounge, it was the only downstairs room apart from the kitchen, in the front room, as we used to call it. She was 41 or 42. My dad was a hard-working, hard-drinking, typical copper you can imagine. He tried to look after us. It didn't work. I ended up in care, but we'll leave that for the moment. But my mum died at Christmas. So up until I had my two children, I used to hate Christmas because of that, I think. As I had my children, I've got over it. Well, I don't know if I have got over it. Again, if you've been through death, you'll know what I'm trying to say here. So today, I thought about that saddle and her scrubbing that seat of that bike. And I thought about that apple and the fact I had half of it, the biggest half. I regret that to this day. Greedy, fat bastard. I was always chubby. And I thought about Tom. I still love Tom Jones. I met him a few times now, and I do adore him, but that's because of my mum. And I thought all about this today. And I thought, well, we used to have great Christmases. We never had great presents. Like I said, my brother was getting a second-hand bike. I can't even remember what my mum had got me. But we ended up having Christmas with my auntie and uncle. They weren't my real auntie and uncle. You know, if you're working class and your mum and dad have got friends, you call them Auntie Jock and Auntie Olwyn. That'd be funny if it's Auntie Jock and Uncle Jock. I ended up living with them for a very, very short period of time when my dad couldn't cope. Why am I telling you all this? Well, I'm telling you this because my dad's dead now as well. But I wondered what my dad would make of the fact these coppers hadn't gone round to talk to this little kid who's been knocked over. Then I thought about my mum and what would she think of the world we're living in now? Because we've all got everything we could possibly want materially, haven't we? But I don't know what they'd think. And I don't know if we're any happier. Satellite TV, YouTube, like I'm on here, all your TV channels, all the material goods you go on. Was it Mrs. Thatcher who said, you know, the price of everything but the value of nothing? Have we lost something? And then that's taken me on to, well, have we lost Great Britain? Now, this isn't going to be a rant about immigration because I think well-controlled, managed immigration has been good for the country. But then I saw the figures today. And so you've got now Labour bragging, oh, look, the figures are down. You've got the Conservatives saying, no, illegal immigration on the small boats is up. Well, and I can have a rant about that. And maybe if I do a show later, I will. But what I'm trying to get to is, have we lost the soul of Britain? Have we? Have we lost the soul of our great nation? I remember when the first kids, it was a guy called Mickey Robinson. And I think I mentioned this other one to you before when I mixed him up with David Lammy. There was a kid called Trevor Lammy. I think he was from Sierra Leone. But I remember the first black kids coming to my school. I can remember the first Asian kids. I can remember the first Asian bus conductor in Coventry. Well, the first Sikh one who had a turban. And that made me think about Nigel Farage. And it reminded me that, you know, my dad said some things that weren't right. If you look at it now through the perspective of where we are now. And I'm sure I did as well. I'm not proud of it. But that's why I find this confected row 51 years later about Farage. I just find it distasteful and ridiculous on every level. It seems now that every opportunity we can to make a political point, it's made. Why can't we have a bit more unity? I don't know. I'm struggling with this. If you want to help me out, there's lots of people making comments, but I'm not going to go. I don't want to get distracted into other subjects. That's not what I want to do in this show. You're missing the point. I'll find some in the moment that are on the subject that I'm talking about. Because what I'm asking is, are we better off now or worse? Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? I'm struggling with this. What's this one say? I remember playing against Sydney Stringer School in the early 70s, and they were all black lads. I don't think that was it. Well, it might have been. Yeah, 72, 73. Could well have been. Sydney Stringer, of course, was in a place called Hillfields. I'm your vintage John, says Craig Urquhart. When did we have to have two incomes to even try and buy a house? Now, this is a very good point. Like you, my dad worked and my mum looked after the household. That's what my mum did, which makes me feel sexist. But what happened to our economy? You're right. My mum, it was quaintly called working for pin money. She ended up as a dinner lady, not one of the women who made the food. I mean, in the playground, holding your hand, holding kids' hands as they walked around. But she was always there for us. We had no money. And by the way, I'm not saying in a nostalgic way, let's go back to that. Let's not have women working. I'm not saying any of that. But you're right, Craig. When did we have to get to a situation where two people in the relationship had to work? And was that the beginning of the demise? Is that where the yobbish behaved? Again, not nostalgia. I remember a massive fight on Radford Common. Massive scrap. I also remember when who came? It was South Africa, came to play rugby at Coventry Rugby Club. My dad was on overtime because the Springboks, they were called, weren't they? Massive scrap. So I'm not saying, I'm certainly not saying Coventry had no crime. Coventry was a boom town, as the special said. But that meant people got knifed. Knifed, even. There was crime then. I remember when the copper got shot in Davis's sports shop in Far Gossard Street. Some of these things won't mean anything to you if you're not from Coventry. But if you are, I'm just asking, how did this happen? Where did we lose Britain? Because didn't we have a sense of community when we had nothing? I don't think that's nostalgia. I think that's true. The Feral Game says we are worse now. Feral Game again, he's come on again. He says it's defo worse. And then he says, Craig, that's a really good point you've just made. Thank you. So are we worse off now than we were then? And as I say, if you want to join in and comment on these things, that's fine. But I'm quite happy just talking this out. I just want to know, where did we lose Great Britain? Was it? I remember the day when they closed down. This was later. I was when I owned my first house in a place called Kingsland Avenue in Chapelfields. They used to all walk to the factory, to Canley. It's now, of course, like lots of old industrial sites, a massive Sainsbury's and a retail park. Most of the retail parks going bankrupt by the look of it. But Sainsbury's took it over. It employed 25,000 people. 25,000 people. And overnight, closed down. Triumph Standard. They're not, was it Triumph Standard? Yeah, because I worked there just before I went to university. Well. It was for a company called Commando Cleaning. Our job was to clean the factory. And it was a pigsty, let me tell you. Not like factories now. Factories now, you could eat your dinner off the floor. It's a completely different world. It's all robots. But when I was working there, we had to stand at the end of the track and push cars that didn't have the right parts. This is the period of Red Robbo and the rest of it, and terrible management. It wasn't just the unions, by the way. So many cars got to the end of the track. They had their gallon of petrol in or whatever. That was the thing. There was this old boy. He was up on the track, and I think it was the last thing that happened. He used to have to put petrol, either a gallon or two. If you worked on the track, tell me, because I don't know. But a gallon or 2 gallons in. And then the car comes down the track, and then there's like a test bed. It goes into this big box, basically, and they rev it up on those wheels. You know, you've seen it on Top Gear, where they go in and I don't know what they're checking. I was only 18. I didn't have a clue about it. But these were beautiful cars. Dolomite Sprints. Do you remember the Dolomite Sprint? Triumph Stag. Oh, when I lived in Hull with my auntie Rosemary, our geography teacher, Mr. Clark, he was the typical geography teacher. He had pads, leather pads on his Harris tweed jacket and whatever. Anyway, one summer, he went off school. He came back. He was all dressed up, smart suit, completely different. And he was driving a red Triumph Stag. He'd got himself a new bird over the summer holidays. Oh, I tell you, next to a Jag, that's the car. Although when they rust bucket, I don't know. I'm going off the point. Getting back to the track. Oh, so there's this old boy who used to put the petrol in. And me being clever, or thinking I was clever, said, wouldn't it be better if you did 2 or 3 cars? Then you could have a pause, because they were coming. I don't know what speed. Again, if you worked on the track, you tell me. I don't know what speed they were coming down the track. And he said, oh, smart ass you are, aren't you? He says it only extends to 2 cars. So he couldn't do that. He could only do 2. He did that all day, every day. But overnight, 25,000 people lost their jobs. I remember my dad telling me about Coventry, that people came when it was the boomtown and they gave up. Are you listening, Keir Starmer? They gave up jobs as skilled tool makers to work on the track because you got more money. They built these massive housing estates all around Coventry. Private estates. Places like Eastern Green, Mount Nod, where the car workers, because they were earning so much money, could live. All the management lived in Kenilworth and Warwick, which is why Coventry was always a fucking cultural desert, which is why the specials were right when they said it was like a ghost town, because all the people with the real money, they lived out on the outskirts, and that's where the restaurants were. Sorry, I really am digressing, but I'm trying to just give you a flavour of what it was. And then Coventry just became overnight effective, not just because of this one factory, because the factories closed down. Then the violence started. And at the same time, the racism started. I can remember the night the guy got kicked to death outside the chip shop, which is why the specials did a concert at the Butts Arena. This was several years later, of course. I'd just gone to university. Linville getting stabbed in the eye in the Burgess in Coventry in a nightclub. Then when the money went, the city went. And did the closure of the factories, that's what I was asking, is that where we lost some of our community? I don't know. Maybe it was different where you are. Maybe you're from a pit village. Maybe you're from, somewhere else where a similar thing happened. And then, yes, Mrs. Thatcher, who I'm a supporter of largely, especially because of the property-owning democracy, but she also wrecked communities. Mining communities, not just in Wales and places, but in places like Kersley and Coventry. My mate, Mick, I was at school with him. He was a great bloke. I always remember in careers, they said, so, John, what do you want to do? I want to be an actor, I said. And they all just laughed at me, right? An actor from Coventry, right? This was before Clive Owen and everybody. I said, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to go to university or drama school. I'll give them their due. When my mum had died, this was several years later, the school did give me the money to go to London and do some auditions. I didn't get in. I was useless. I was crap. But they did give me the money. So they did encourage me. This was Blue Coat School. However, going back, so then they get to Mick. Mick was massive. He was about 6'4", built like a brick shit house, and he looked like Mick Jagger, right? And he was a bit camp. Well, he was more than a bit camp. He was very camp. He was brilliant. So they said to him, Mick, what do you want to be when you leave school? He says, I want to be a lumberjack. And the whole class erupted, right? Anyway, he couldn't find any lumberjack work in Coventry, surprising. So he ended up as a miner in the pit in Kersley, which is on the outskirts of Coventry. And he was very, very good at it, and he loved it. But then, again, fast forward, miners' strike. He was on strike, I think, for 18 months. 18 months. He was starved back to work. He was starved back to work. He had to go back to work. I don't know where he is. I've not seen him for years. I'd just left university at this point, and I was doing extra work for telly, actually. And I met the university, what do you call it? The Union of Democratic Mine Workers up in Nottinghamshire, the ones who other people called scabs. It's where I was shooting this. I had about 5 lines and they were all cut. But I'm rambling now. I'm sorry. I do apologize. So what I'm saying is, did we lose community? And once we lost community, did we lose hope? Did we lose security? Did we lose pride? I guess. I can't talk about middle-class people, and I can't talk about their experience. I can only talk about my experience. Where did we lose Britain or Great Britain? Why did we start to hate Britain? And why did the upper middle class, the liberals, I mean, was it Tony Blair? I don't know. Who suddenly thought we were all racist? How did we lose Britain? This is good. Reese says, what's a gammon? How old are you, Reese? Look it up, mate, in the Urban Dictionary. Basically, it's anybody over the age of 30 who's got an opinion. I've got some other idiot on here saying, oh, listen to him ranting. I don't think I'm ranting at all today. This old fella, this gammon. And then they've had a go. What did I say? Anyway, something about, look how he's fallen. Look. Yeah, I have, mate. You're right. Yeah. I was the highest paid local DJ in Britain for the BBC. I had a massive job at Talk Radio. I had a massive job on The Sun for nearly 7 years. Yeah, I lost it all. I've got nothing. That make you feel good now? Does it feel good to have a go at me? Up to you, mate. Never mind. Where are we going next? David KT, I remember the toy shop at the back of the Newlands on Tile Hill Lane and Joe's Pumps. I don't remember that. Now, you're a Tile Hill boy, are you? Obviously. So, I just want to now say, Craig Urquhart says, powerful story, John. She knew. Bless you. Oh, thank you very much. What do you mean when she hugged me before I went to bed? I don't think she did know. She had a brain hemorrhage, and there was no sign of it from before, Craig. But thank you for your comment anyway. Again, maybe that's why I'm thinking about this at the moment. I've lost a few mates recently. I've got another mate now who's ill. And I suppose that's age, isn't it? I'm 64 years old. I'm not necessarily worried about dying myself. I used to be, because my mum died at 40-odd. I used to think I was going to go that way. Anyway, can we get back to the point? I'm actually distracting myself, which I find incredible. Where did we lose Great Britain? We're worse now. Kids are greedy and selfish today. Enough is never enough, says Carol Widdowson. We had little, but we were satisfied. We were a lot happier as well. Yes, Carol, fine. But where does that come from? Who instills that in our kids? How did our kids become greedy, if that's true what you're saying? I think there's an element of truth in that. That they're not satisfied. But are we ever satisfied? I look back to when I had money, more money than most people would ever imagine having. And I was a prick. I really was. I mean, I loved my foreign holidays. I had my Jag and I had my Volvo and all that. And the big house in the country. And I was happy with it. I was happy. But I kind of look back at it and think, you were an arrogant twat. I hope all this reflection doesn't mean that tomorrow I'm going to die, because I haven't felt like this before. Craig, hi John, I totally agree with you about that. Hope you and your family are well, and you have a great Christmas. Well, so do I. Were we happier then, though? I do want to know if this is nostalgia. And what do you think about the police not going to see this kid who was knocked over, not investigating it? And oh yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. So I remember the first black kids coming to school, Hill Farm. And yes, there was racism, without a shadow of a doubt, in that period, just like Farage was, in that period, definitely. But actually, underneath it all, we got on, didn't we? I always say this about Allah Akbar and all that nonsense. Up until 7/7 and 9/11, I didn't really know anything about Muslims. And I didn't want to know anything. Does that make me a bad person? When I was on BBC London, people kept sending me copies of the Quran. Oh, you should read this, John. Educate yourself. I don't want to. I'm not interested. I don't believe in any religion. But, I respect the fact you want to be religious. You get on with it. Just don't park all over the pavements on a Friday. Up on the old road, like now, like Muslims do. Well, some Muslims do. I should think Jews do it as well on their holy day. You know the point I'm trying to make. And I think another reason why I'm thinking like this at the moment is my local church, where we used to go when we were Cubs and Scouts, that thing that bound us together that I was telling you about, the church hall is now the church. It was a modern church built in the late 50s, 60s, St. Nicholas Church on Radford Road, if you know Coventry. It's just been demolished because it had concrete cancer or something. It was a great modern building. I think it's a shame, and the council and the church neglected it and got it to a situation where they could have it knocked down. However, that church was a symbol. That church was a unifying factor. Just like the Catholic kids I was telling you about earlier, the Doyles, the Tom Doyles, the Paul Kavanaghs, they went to St. Augustine, or there was a brilliant Catholic church on Big Avenue, I've forgotten the name of it now, which was like a boxing club as well. There was also one up the top of Counter. But I'm sorry, I'm going off the subject. But that kind of bound people. You know, when you used to go to Sunday school and they gave you a card and you put stamps on it, and the idea was to try and get the full Monty, go every week. Now, I'm not religious, but it gave us something, didn't it? I remember when we first came back to Coventry when Rosie was born and we lived in Earlsdon. I used to go to St. Barbara's Church, me, Lisa and Rosie, and there was something there. Even though I wasn't religious, just the thing about going every Sunday gave me a sense of, is it community? Is it unity? I don't know what it is. But I do know we've lost that. It's something like that. Am I making any sense to anybody? Good afternoon, John. I remember the Triumph Sprint. It was a Toledo with a 2-litre engine. Also, the Sprint was rear-wheel drive. I remember the Triumph Stag with a 3-litre engine. Yeah, nice one, taxi driver. 2107. Yeah, it was a brilliant car. Oh, here's the person who thinks it's funny. Pit Stop Potato 1. Can't even be brave enough to put his own name on it. Ha, ha, ha. This guy is now left ranting on YouTube. How far he's fallen. Well, I hope that gave you an erection. I hope that gave you a little fuzz in your little panties, mate. Oh, I slagged that Gaunty off. I told him he was a no mark. He's a failure. He's this. All right, love. 7% of all +2 children families in the UK are foreign born. 375,000 families are going to be paid for the excess children. That's a horrible way that's the wrong word to use, if you don't mind me saying, White Van Man, 9,500. Nobody's excess. No child is an excess. Meanwhile, white British children's families will be paying for them. Well, it won't just be white families paying for them. I know you're going on about the 2-child benefit, and I don't really want to have a massive row with you today, but I think you should think about the way you're expressing yourself. There is a problem with illegal and indeed legal immigration at the moment, and it needs to be addressed, and our cowardly politicians don't address it. I know all of that. But what I'm trying to do, and it's obviously missed you completely, gone completely over your head, what I'm trying to do in this show today. I'm just trying to be straight, if I'm allowed to be that anymore, and honest with you and say what I'm thinking about at the moment. I only ask you to do the same and try to come out of your tribal silo. You can even have a bit of nostalgia today. I don't mind. It's a wonder no one's mentioned chopper bikes yet. My dad had a modified Austin Allegro. Oh, God. It was originally a 1300, but replaced with a 1750cc out of an Austin Maxi twin card sport. It could wheel spin in second gear. Very nice taxi driver. My mate Dave Howarth, his dad had, was it the Austin Princess? Yeah, that was like an Allegro, wasn't it? A modified, upgraded one. Nice car. Nice car. I'm just writing about it. I'm writing a new TV series thing. Well, I say that makes me sound like Billy Big Bollocks. I've just started a treatment for a TV series that I've had an idea about. I can't tell you much more than that, but it's all based on, there used to be a project in Birmingham called the Wheels Project. A very good friend of mine who's no longer with us, he used to run it. It was like where kids had been hot wiring cars, nicking cars. They basically gave them a purpose in life and said, look, come here. We'll teach you how, not just how wire, but mechanics and the rest of it. It was a great project. Got closed down. So I'm doing something based loosely on that idea. Because again, you've got to give kids a purpose in life. When I went to Bluecoat in Coventry, and it was a really strict school. It was only a comprehensive. But academically, it was pretty crap, really. I mean, there were some bright kids, myself included, but I was lazy. But when I went to the school in Hull, when I lived with my auntie for 2 years, I went to a place called Greatfield High. This school had about 1,500 kids. It was two old schools put together. I'll tell you where it is. It's where the Hull Kingston Rovers now play rugby league. But they had a brilliant idea there. Kids who weren't academic, remember this is in the 70s, they were allowed to do things like mechanics. So they would go stock car racing and modifying cars. When they got to about the age of 14, I thought this was brilliant. And I think this is how it should be now. I suppose it's like going to technical college. It used to be. That was before my time. But not every kid is academic. And look at it now. And not just because you're not academic doesn't mean you can't earn loads of money. And I just thought that was so progressive, so forward thinking. And their academic results were brilliant. Two of my classmates from that school went to Cambridge or Oxford after I left. I'm sure if I'd stayed there, I would have done better academically. I came back to Coventry to me mental dad, but there we are. That's another story for another day. Strawberry Atheist 2114. Probably when you got sacked, John, you was cancelled first. It snowballed from there. Well, when we lost Great Britain. Maybe. I don't know, you know. People say to me, do I regret saying what I said to that guy? No, I don't. But I'd rather not got cancelled. When I look back on it, maybe I should have just said sorry and moved on. Anyway, who knows? I lived in Hatfield that had Hawker Siddeley, later called British Aerospace. The town was booming. Employed 70% of the town, they did. It closed down. They sold the land off. And the area is now run down. It's a similar kind of story, isn't it? It's a similar kind of story. Is that what it was? Losing our industrial base, losing our mines, M-I-N-E-S. Is that what lost the great in Britain? Philip Payne says, careful, John, we mustn't commit wrong thing. Don't really know what you mean, mate. But anyway, I've never been so politically aware, says Denise Deacon, as I am now. And I miss the times when I wasn't. I miss just getting on with my life. This is a great point you're making, Denise. Bringing up my three girls in ignorance of what was actually going on in the world. Yeah, sometimes ignorance is bliss. I was just living day to day and working to bring in extra money. Christmas was always a big thing for us. But now Christmas is for my grandchildren. I lost my husband 5 years ago, and life is just getting through one day to the next. I just think to myself, I'm glad my parents aren't alive to see this. That's a very moving comment. Thank you, Denise, for it. I tell you what, I just remembered now, last night, late night, I was looking at my phone, and this woman, Ruth Newbury, her name is, she was my biggest, one of my biggest fans when I was on BBC Three Counties Radio. And she's asked to become a friend on Facebook. So I've immediately said yes. She was a lovely woman. I never met her in person. She's an ex-teacher, and she used to ring my phone in most days. And she used to talk about her husband. And I noticed from her Facebook that her husband has passed away. Ruth, can't wait to talk to you. Can't wait to hear from you again. So, yes, we're now Facebook friends. Thank you very much indeed. I was listening live, John, that day when you said that remark that got you cancelled. All right, you're trying to depress me. Thank you, Strawberry. Don't worry, John. I liked you when you were a prick too. That's a brilliant comment. Who's that? Go the Goodoon or something. Thank you very much. Yeah. It's amazing people like me when I was a bit full of myself, but yeah, I appreciate your comment. Thank you. I remember what my old World War II dad said, there'll always be wars. No war will be the last until the day the whole earth is blown to bits. Thank you very much indeed. Generation X here. I remember it all starting to come in at school. They started teaching Atlantic slave trade with a dash of guilt. That was mid-80s. You know, you make an interesting point there. But when you look into the slave trade, it's not anything we can be proud of. I know. We were the first people to stop it, etc., etc. But I also know the only people who've ever got compensation for the Atlantic slave trade are the slave traders and the slave owners, not the relatives. The whole idea of reparations is very difficult, I accept, but it's my wife, she studied English. I think I've told you before, in PA and then an MA. But she did the North Atlantic slave trade, a lot of the books about that, and I read them. I just thought it was, they put a few slaves in the hold. But then when you actually read about it, how they crammed them in, they never stood up. They all lay down. It's just horrendous. But it's for another day. It's another day for that. Where are we going to next? Diane. Oh, no. First of all, Patrick Hanley. I'm going to have to stop in a minute. We gave Coventry and the UK away. Maybe we did. As you can see, I'm not trying to be too political today with a capital P. I'm just knocking some ideas around. I'm just trying to say, are you as confused as me? Where did we lose Great Britain? If you like what I'm talking about, please press the like button. I see quite a lot of people have done that. Thank you. And you can donate if you want. You know how to do that. www.buymeacoffee.com/John Gaunt, or click the little $sign on the YouTube. This is the John Gaunt Show. I'm normally here at 6:30, Mondays to Thursdays. And I'm normally doing more of a ranty sort of phone-in show without phones. But today, I just suddenly had to do it. I couldn't wait till 6:30. I just needed to talk about it now. I don't know if I'll come on and do another show later. We'll see. Diane, I'll read this out. This is not where I wanted to go with this. The problem is Islam. Islam is the problem. We all know it, but we're afraid to talk about it. We're afraid to shout and scream about it and protest it. We have an abused mindset, and we just need to find some courage to stand up and get angry and push back. Schools and churches and universities are all complicit on what is happening, as well as government. Yes, Diane, but don't you think some Muslim people are lovely? And they've got something that we've lost. That's really what I'm talking about. Anyway, we had a wheels project in Stevenage in the 90s, says Strawberry. Thank you very much. I had an Austin Princess as a taxi, says Taxi Driver. Thank you very much indeed. This is brilliant. Craig Urquhart says, I think things started to go wrong when Ernie Hunt scored that famous free kick in 1970 with Willie Carr. Who scored it? Who flicked it? Was it flicked up by Willie Carr and hit by Ernie Hunt, or was it flicked up by Ernie Hunt and hit? This is when the last time we were brilliant. And now we've got some other idiot saying Jews are the problem. Nimble horse. No. I really wanted us today to lift ourselves out of our tribal silos. Some people obviously can't, which is a shame, a real shame. There's even somebody going on about diversity destroyed Britain. Well, I'd agree with that to a large extent. But then they go on to say things like, we can't have Muslim mayors. And I give up when it's like that. We just need to be a bit more. Willie Carr. It was Willie Carr. Thank you very much, Craig. Well, I'm finishing now. I didn't know how long have I done? 50 minutes. I'm ever so sorry. I didn't mean to take up all your afternoon. I just wanted to talk about, have we lost Great Britain? I didn't want it to, Can we rediscover it? Have we lost our sense of what we are? See, look, there's another person now going on. I'm not even going to read it out. I'm sorry, I'm not. That's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about today is what's our responsibility. Because I think with politics nowadays, we've got too into this. It's their fault. It's his fault. It's his fault. It's myself included. I mean, yesterday was ridiculous with that budget. But with Christmas coming and all the rest of it. And then I just thought this thing about, were we happier when we had nout? I used to laugh at my mum and dad when they said that, but maybe that's why I'm now gammon. Anyway, if you've enjoyed what I've talked about, or if it's intrigued you or you thought about it, why don't you try and listen to me? The best thing you could do is join John Gaunt TV. You go to John Gaunt TV, which is on YouTube, and it'll ask you, do you want to subscribe? It's completely free. Subscribe, then you can listen and watch all of my videos, including the ranty ones and this one, the more reflective one. I also do it as a podcast, so you can listen when you're out and about. If you like what I do, please feel free to donate some cash. Dead simple. Just click on the $sign on the YouTube video, or just below the YouTube video, or go to www.buymeacoffee.com/John Gaunt. And as I say, if I feel up to it, and I'll do another show at 6:30, because I did get my rag off earlier with what's happened about the budget, but I'm not sure. We'll see. We've got some idiot now saying war is coming, stockpile everything. Taxi driver says, give us a tune on the piano. It's not real. It's a green screen. Anyway, never mind. And Patrick Hanley says, John, what you dream is gone. Yeah, but wouldn't it be good to bring back some of the 70s? And I'm not talking about mud or Slade or chopper bikes or marathons instead of Snickers. Anyway, if you've got kids, please give them a kiss, give them a hug. Hey, don't forget to tell them you love them. I'll be back soon. All the best. Bye-bye.